President Zuma is very clear that he wants to see the destruction of the GNU. We shouldn't help him. He's no fool. We shouldn't help him. The DA then also, I see they're making a critical mistake. The foreign policy of the ANC became the foreign policy of the government. And until we repel it, it's still standing. They think the ANC will collapse if the DA walks away. They've not looked around them. Gauteng wants nothing to do with the DA, and they're still standing. So if they think the ANC will rather lose power than work with MK or EFF, they're making a big mistake. I am saying now is
This is where South Africa's politics is actually shifting to. Yet Mackenzie has some really interesting thoughts on the GNU, where he argues that the GNU should not show cracks, the GNU should show cooperation. But how does the GNU show cooperation when it still has members that have really divergent worldviews, epistemes, and economic values as their foundational points? Let's get into what Gayton Mackenzie has to say about this whole problem that is really brewing around the GNU regarding President Ramaphosa, regarding Putin, regarding the DA, regarding Helen Zille, and I'll be back with some really interesting analysis.
Gayton, how is it going in the Government of National Unity? How strong is it holding together?
Well, I think we started like a rocket. Started very well. I think we are facing our first headwinds as the Government of National Unity. I think that between the ANC and the DA, I see people making mistakes. Like, for instance, the ANC would, for instance, use terms like erstwhile oppressors when referring to the DA, which I think is insulting, it's wrong. It needs to be called, they need to be called to order. The DA then also, I see they're making a critical mistake in wanting to not accept that we serve at the behest of the president. We serve the GNU. We found certain laws there, and those laws will stand until it gets repealed. There's still some apartheid laws in government. You can't just unilaterally remove laws. You got to repeal them first. There's a process you have to go through. So the foreign policy, for instance, which is the hot potatoes at the moment, the foreign policy of the ANC became the foreign policy of the government. And until we repel it, it's still standing. Now you can't think of the foreign policy at your head today and tomorrow you got a different one. I don't agree with most of the foreign policy of South Africa. I don't agree with, but I have to respect it because that's the current one until we change it. That's why we've created this cabinet. There's the cabinet committees. There is the clearinghouse, which is specifically our brainchild to sort out problems like this ones. Now, when leaders create the clearinghouse and then they go to the public, to play to the public gallery, it's wrong. It's wrong. It's fine now to play to the public gallery and call others water bottles for knowing we serve under number one. It's fine for that, but you know what? The enemies of the GNU, they are organizing themselves. They look at cracks. We should never show cracks as the GNU. We should sit behind closed doors. Look at the Bella Bill is the best example for me. We were against the Bella Bill. I got a call from John Steenhuisen, and he asked me, what's your take on the Bella Bill? And I told him I'm against certain aspects, 4 and 5. He then said he's also against it. Freedom Front Plus was against it. We then decided let us verbalize our disagreement. And the president, you know what it took of the ANC to listen to us and to come back to us and say, those points that you're unhappy about, we are going to withdraw them. There were a lot of people in the ANC that said, Cyril Ramaphosa is being controlled. While he took a leadership position in furthering the GNU. No ego. He was criticized, but he said, I'm going to take this decision. And the ANC took that decision, which I think they should be praised for. Now we are fighting and talking behind closed doors. And I think we should put South Africa first. Some of our leaders has not moved out of campaign mode or out of an opposition mode or out of being in government mode. This is the moment to put South Africa first.
Now, Gayton, many of the predictions you made pre the election have come true. So I think you are a good person to ask, what are your predictions for the 2026 municipal elections? All of them, especially on my show, even though you and I got a lot of flack for that.
Yes.
Okay.
No, they say, yes, I think we are in trouble. And I say I think we are in serious trouble. I remember when I was on the Daily Maverick platform with John Steenhuisen, Sabisa, Mashaba. The question was asked by Stephen Grootes, what do you think about MK and Zuma's chances? All of them on that stage said, he's not a threat. He's not a threat. I then said to Stephen Grootes, the tapes are there. I said, they are all lying. They are not living in reality. Zuma's going to be a force to be reckoned with. Zuma's going to come in like a tornado. Well, the rest is history. Zuma has shown us. Now, if you think Zuma has come through like a tornado, he's going to come through in 2026 like a tsunami. Zuma is working day and night. Now, people that hate Zuma don't want to hear this, but we must be realistic about it. Zuma is bringing in, whether you call them state capture guys, whether you call them criminals, he's bringing people in with a following. And that's what politics is about. It's about the following. And Zuma is pulling everyone in. He had a coup. To bring in Floyd Shivambu. That brains. We all know Zuma is, we can see how he's always with Floyd. Zuma is grooming Floyd. So people that say Zuma's old, he knows he's old. But while the ANC is still busy with 2027, instead of concentrating on 2026, the ANC is busy lobbying who must take positions. If they are not careful, Zuma is going to become the biggest party. And the GNU is the only thing that can stop Zuma, not the ANC, the GNU. If the GNU produces, if the GNU does well, if the GNU keeps to their promises and they change South Africa for the better, people will then say, but why do you change? You don't change a winning model. But if the GNU bickers and the GNU wants to play to the gallery and the GNU partners are fighting for each other, that's a gift to Zuma. Whether you like Zuma or whatever, Zuma got right what the ANC and all of us failed to get right. He managed to basically half destroy the EFF. The ANC couldn't. That thing is finished, called EFF. It's finished. Let me tell you, they can talk. There's no ideology left. It's just insults that's left there. The thinkers that's left, the thinkers that remain, I'm told confidentially, they're also on their way out. So I'm saying to you that the DA and the ANC should stop put party first and should put country first. We are one of the fastest growing parties now. We've just won a by-election on Wednesday. We won a by-election against the ANC and the DA in George, or 20. So I'm not talking here as a party that's not growing. But you got to understand, we have to put South Africa first and put party second. Once you want to put your party position as country position, we are playing with fire. People that say the GNU will walk away from the GNU. Let me explain to you what they are saying. They are saying when they walk away from the GNU, they think the ANC will collapse if the DA walks away. They've not looked around them. Gauteng wants nothing to do with the DA. Gauteng local government, the COJ, Ekurhuleni, Tshwane, they want nothing to do with the DA. And they're still standing. So if they think the ANC will rather lose power than work with MK or EFF, they're making a big mistake. I am saying now it's time for cool heads. That's what I'm saying. And you can call me, if I come from a school when your leader is under attack, you protect. Because there's a saying that says, you hit the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Now, once you allow people to always go for the president, It's actually the GNU that's being under attack. President Zuma is very clear that he wants to see the destruction of the GNU. We shouldn't help him. He's no fool. We shouldn't help him.
I think I really saw a recent podcast with Prince Mashele. I think he was on, one of the podcasts anyway, one of these big South African podcasters who actually argued that President Ramaphosa is overseeing the death of the ANC. And I really did not understand that statement anyway. But it appears really, there's some kind of like understanding that is rising now as I really see and try to analyze what's really going on with the MK party, taking a lot of members sort of like from the EFF and really restructuring, especially when I think I found an interview by a journalist from Eyewitness News where former President Zuma said that, the MK will correct the wrong of the ANC. So it appears that in the long run, the MK party is almost becoming the ANC, the correct ANC, and that, that's probably why we see a sort of like restructuring of the ANC now in the likes of the MK. And I think that would really kind of like something that should really be taken proper care and observation on what's really going on in South Africa's landscape at the moment. Now, the Bay has actually spoken about this a lot because if you notice the new members of the MK party, they're really strategic. The membership that Jacob Zuma is actually trying to really push together is a really strategic kind of membership. We see the likes of the guy, I think one of the guys who has actually worked with Transnet, I think Brand Molefe also. He really understands the the business wing of how the ANC system has actually functioned. But then also the recent one of these advocates from the EFF, I think her name is Mbekwane also, moving from the EFF to the MK party. Dr. John Schloppe as well being pulled into the MK party, who understands the judicial system in South Africa. So it's a really interesting move. And like Mackenzie speaks about how Zuma is coming like a tsunami. He actually predicted that, Jacob Zuma at the time is still a political force in South Africa, despite the fact that he's 80 plus in age, but he's still a political force in South Africa that should not be taken for granted. Now the bill also raises the same issues, the same problem that, getting Jacob Zuma should actually be studied. And the whole framing, according to the whole framing of the MK party now, we see Floyd Chivambu had actually left the EFF. He actually claimed that he built the EFF. If you look at the recent podcast he had with SMX, Sizwe Mpofu Welsh, where he spoke about the issues around the EFF. I'm making some videos on that on my other channel where I argue on, the EFF and other Pan-African bodies rising up in Africa. But we see that Floyd Chivambu argues that he actually was part of those who built the structure of the EFF. And leaving the EFF now to the MK party, we can see he's actually also playing the same role. So the MK party now has a constitution. It's beginning to have a really powerful structure. Its membership is really growing in droves and really powerful, potent members, of, I think, the whole ANC, EFF, cadre system actually now moving into the MK party. I think it's something that should really be taken seriously, and that getting Mackenzie raises here in this video, I think it's something that probably South Africans need to really carefully think through as they proceed into the future. But anyway, I don't know, what do you guys think about getting Mackenzie's speech here about Zuma and the whole issue with the GNU crack? I think it's really also interesting that, he speaks about how there should be cooperation in the GNU, but then the GNU is a kind of like a government that has different members with different worldviews, different epistems, different ways of governing, different representations of economic values and all that. We have center-right parties coalescing with really left-wing parties and all that. So it's really difficult to really reach a point of agreement. And so we could see that when President Ramaphosa made that speech about Russia being an ally, we see the heat coming in, but then getting Mackenzie trying to douse that, and then he's also being called what was the term? I think it was a water bearer or something like that for the ANC. So we can see this whole divide and how the GNU can function properly in light of getting Mackenzie's call that the GNU should not show cracks is really something that really should raise some concerns about the longevity of the GNU as the government of South Africa. And if the GNU breaks down, what we're beginning to see is the replacement of that whole kind of like hole, so to speak, that would be left at that gap by the MK party and not the ANC. And that would really that would really transform South Africa's politics in a really, really large way. Because then what would happen to the DA? Would the DA go back into opposition? What kind of opposition will it be in light of Jacob Zuma-led MK party? I think that will be something that will really be the talking point of probably the entire global South. But anyway, we'll keep studying and understanding these things. What do you guys think about this? Share your thoughts in the comments.